Training camp is officially underway at the VMAC. What went down in Wednesday's first session, and how different is it from year one under head coach Mike Macdonald? Rob Rang and I are going to be breaking it all down here live from the VMAC on a new episode of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined in the flesh by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, here at the VMAC. And a special thanks to all the 12s, whether you're tuning in from Sacramento, California, or Helena, Montana. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We got a jam-packed episode coming your way here on the shores of Lake Washington. We're going to be diving into what we saw and heard day one Seahawks training camp from the VMAC, including a new veteran making his presence felt in drill work and everybody else following his lead. Going to be a really fun episode brought your way courtesy of our friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money by using the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, now for our lead story here, live on site at the VMAC on Locked On Seahawks. Training camp officially underway for Seattle, year two under Mike Macdonald. Rob, year two, as I just mentioned, what are some of the differences that we saw here compared to last year in the first practice when Mike Macdonald was coaching this football team? At least in my opinion, there were some differences from what we saw this time last year.
Well, no question about it, Corbin. I think the biggest thing is obviously there's some differences in personnel. You got Sam Darnold rather than Geno Smith. You got Cooper Kupp rather than DK Metcalf, et cetera, et cetera. We know about that. I was really interested to see the difference in the offensive philosophy now with Clint Kubiak as opposed to Ryan Grubb. And so some of the things that really were very intentional, very apparent, was just the way that they made some alignments. I mean, the fact that you have a fullback, and Robbie Oots was getting an awful lot of play, as was Brady Russell, both as a tight end as well as a fullback. So I thought that was interesting. The alignment of Marquez Valdez-Scantling was another one that was interesting. He has been perceived to be just strictly outside vertical threat. He was doing an awful lot of lining up out of the slot. That, to me, was interesting. Elijah Arroyo was lined up outside, exactly as the Seahawks had said that they were intending to do as that outside X receiver. So, to me, those are some of the things. And then, finally, I want to kind of focus in on the offensive line. And you mentioned some of the things that we saw, some of the things that we heard. I saw some real coaching, some tutoring of Seattle's offensive line. Very different than a year ago. And, again, I don't want to be negative about any of the past coaches here in Seattle. But at the same time, one of the things I overheard was some moving around along the offensive line where the offensive line coaches basically said, look, San Francisco is going to have this five-man front. How do you adjust? Do you chase if a defensive lineman is able to get pursuit?
Yep. And
so all of that, those kind of specific coaching techniques, I thought it just looks like this is more of a team that is preparing for a deep playoff run rather than kind of getting their feet wet, so to speak.
Yeah, it's interesting because they do something here called ATC, which is a slowed down walkthrough type tempo. And we saw it a lot last year during training camp. And sometimes it was just a change of pace because you don't want these guys smacking each other with pads on the entire practice. But there's going to be a lot of that here in these first few sessions because the pads are not out yet. It's OTA style, non-padded, heavily regulated, can't have the contact. So you're going to do more of the walkthrough oriented thing. But with that being said, away from having a few team sessions where they were slowing down the pace intentionally to really work on the mental part of the game, I could feel the speed difference when the Seahawks were doing their team drills at full speed today. Just the pace, even compared to what we saw in June. And it was almost like, it's weird saying this, but it was almost like it was methodically fast. Like you could tell that there was an intentionality to it and that they were playing at a high speed. Sam Darnold getting the ball out quicker. I'll have more on that later in the show. But that to me is the biggest difference that we are seeing in this year compared to last year. And we expected it to play faster when you're in year two with a coach because you know the scheme. You understand what Mike Macdonald's asking. And I know that you've got a new offensive coordinator, but there is a lot of carryover for a number of these players who have either played with Sean McVay or they've played with over in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell. They played for coaches from the same tree that have a lot of the same things. So it's not an identical offense, but it does feel like you're a little bit quicker ahead than you were last year with Ryan Grubb coming up from the college level, where it was completely a new offense for the Seahawks. So I feel like the pace was the biggest difference today. And I also think, we'll talk more about this later, but you just can tell the buy-in. And Mike McDonald was talking about this today after practice about just how critical he believes it is for guys to be at the off-season program. And we know they're voluntary practices, but they had a couple practices that we were out here for where they had all 90 players on the field. Maybe not all of them were practicing, but they were on the field. Like, that's unheard of in today's NFL, but it tells you where Mike McDonald and his crew is at. And that's the kind of carryover you're going to get into a training camp practice like we saw today, where they've had all these guys around. They're not trying to catch anybody up. Even the guys that were hurt were there. And that plays into the pacing aspect where they are able to just look quicker, play faster. That is going to be huge for this team in year two. And the fact that they're starting to do it already in offense, I think, is a very encouraging development.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, the word that kept coming up to my mind as I was watching practice, just how crisp things were.
Yeah.
It was very efficient. And you mentioned in my name, Sam Darnold here. So let's kind of just, talk about the elephant in the room. I thought Sam Darnold had a terrific opening day of practice here at training camp. I know all the fans that were watching on the berm were treated to some pinpoint accurate throws. A couple of throws where he was on the bootleg and he was throwing on the move. A couple of throws where he had to get the ball out of his hands very, very quickly. It wasn't like it was vanilla defense. While there wasn't a lot of hitting, they weren't in shoulder pads, of course, at this point in the training camp process. But at the same time, Mike McDonald still was aggressive. There were still some blitzes that were thrown out there. You saw the quarterbacks have to get the ball out of their hands, and then he showed that beautiful accuracy over the top, the trajectory, the easily catchable ball that we have talked about before. That does make Sam Darnold, at least in my opinion, an upgrade in some ways over Geno Smith from a year ago.
And I think what's interesting when you look at specific plays, I think the two best throws that were made all day by any of Seattle's quarterbacks were incompletions. And the reason I'm saying that is there was a deep ball to Jackson Smith-Njigba with Devin Witherspoon all over him, and the ball was just floated perfectly over the top of Witherspoon. It was good coverage, but Jackson Smith-Njigba was able to reel it. Unfortunately, the edge of his left foot was on the out-of-bounds line, and the ref they had out there did a really good job of watching, making sure, but so it wasn't a catch. And then Cody White made a diving grab in the end zone. He made the catch. He reeled the ball in, but unfortunately his right knee went down just outside of the out-of-bounds marker. It was a really good throw against tight coverage by Sam Darnold that put it in a spot where only Cody White is going to be able to catch it, and he did catch it. Unfortunately, could not get his feet down in bounds before the knee got down. So both those plays didn't count, but those were the best throws, and it really showed you what Sam Darnold is capable of doing. And I had him down for one incompletion in the team sessions that were regular tempo today, 5 for 6 throwing the football, had a couple times that he tucked and ran. So I thought you saw him getting the ball out quicker, and he was doing a really good job of unloading the ball in a time-based fashion, which is going to be crucial in this offense.
Yeah, no question about it. And another thing that I thought was interesting is just the way that Seattle, again, lined up along the offensive line. I mean, we all know that the right guard position seems to be the only one right now that feels like it is an absolute battle. And we've been focusing primarily on two players. For the second-year pro, Christian Haynes, the third-year pro in Anthony Bradford, and then another player thrust his name into the conversation, and that being Jalen Sundell. He has primarily been talked about as possibly being in the mix at the center position. Oluwatimi was basically the primary center throughout most of the day. Jalen Sundell got some time at center, but he also got some significant time at that right guard spot. So to me, that is going to be the positional battle that is going to be worth watching here throughout training camp.
We've got a lot more to dive into from this first practice at Seahawks training camp. More offensive line talk, receiver talk. We're going to talk all offense coming up next here on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I first started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on fast food delivery. Now I'm budgeting a little bit smarter, saving more for other expenses that pop up in my life. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to track your finances and make sure that your spending is tracked for long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts and goals, and they are all on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and can get to work in an average of 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you stay confident and control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rougiette might be the answer for you. Over 150,000 men have already tried and made the switch. You can even read customer reviews on their site. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedInNFL and use the code LockedInNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedInNFL and use the promo code LockedInNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiette website for full safety information. Welcome back to the Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks, and I should say opening training camp day edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang, and a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. We are live here from the VMAC, taking a quick look at day one of Seahawks training camp. And as we just broke down, Sam Darnold, one of the players that obviously is under the microscope, the new starting quarterback, we got to see that catchable football that you've talked about so much, even on plays that ultimately did not count, like that Cody White reception, diving in the end zone. There were plenty of great throws for the fans here at the VMAC to see the kind of throwing talent that Sam Darnold brings to the equation. But being the running back guy, I got to go back to the backfield here because, of course, this is, as Mike McDonald said, somebody asked him what he was looking forward to this year, and he made it clear it's all about running off the ball, running off the rock. They want to get that run game going, that physical style. And listen, this is the time of year where guys show up at training camp, and we always hear the storylines, the narratives. I'm in the best shape of my career. I've done all kinds of crazy stuff this offseason to make myself better. I'm the best shape that I've been. Look, Ken Walker III is the best shape that I have ever seen him in. I'm just saying right now that Ken Walker III, he has definitely been doing squats. He has not missed leg day this offseason, and you can just see it with the explosiveness. And it was just nice, as Mike McDonald said, to see him on the field today because he missed time in OTAs and minicamp. He got a lot of the reps with the first-team offense today. Usual dynamite self, but just very noticeable that the dude's he's got thighs popping out. I mean, the dude is jacked. His lower body looks much different compared to his first 3 years in the league. I think that is extremely good news for the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, I thought that Kenneth Walker III was the best player on the football field today. I mean, he just, every time the ball was in his hands, you just saw a different level of explosiveness. Yeah. And look, I love Seattle's running back backfield. I just think that the talent at running back to me is this team's strongest position. It felt like Ken Walker III basically had watched yesterday's program, Corbin, and realized that he was not among our top four most important Seahawks on the field. And it almost like he took that personal because every time he got the ball in his hands, like I said, I mean, his burst to and through the line of scrimmage. Obviously, there's minimal contact in these types of things. So what I'm looking for is somebody who has been evaluating players for a long time. It's just who's got real juice, who just stands apart from everybody else. Look, I thought that Zach Charbonnet had a good day. I thought that the rookie, Damian Martinez, made some nice runs. But still, Kenneth Walker III, it was a whole different level than anybody else on the field, in my opinion.
And I'm going to go to that point with Elijah Arroyo. And look, I don't want to get fans thinking that this ball's going downhill like, oh, we have the next Tony Gonzalez, or we have the next, Jimmy Graham, or some of these great receiving tight ends that have come through the NFL. Travis Kelce. I mean, this guy's got different juice than what Travis Kelce's got. But look, this guy, is the most fluid running tight end on this roster. Even if Noah Fant was out here right now, I would still say that. He made a one-handed grab with his left hand today off a deflected pass from Mike Morris. It was a really impressive grab that he made. He had another catch where he was sliding before he went out of bounds and reeled in on a throw from Drew Lock, who I thought had another really good day today for the Seahawks. Drew Lock was slinging the ball around, but Elijah Arroyo was getting involved, and he caught a big pass down the seam. Look, I'm not trying to get fans too excited where they're like frothing at the mouth here, like, oh man, we got a fantasy stud or whatever. But I think there's a lot of reason to be excited about Elijah Arroyo. And today you got to see some of those skills that made it that they drafted him 50th overall with those really soft hands and the ability to, it seems like if the ball's a zip code, he is going to catch it like he's got sticky tack on his hands. And we get to see that today from him. Yeah, both he and Jackson Smith and Jigba, I thought were absolutely terrific among the pass catchers. I mean, just both of them made multiple catches where they just snatched the ball out of the proximity of the defensive backs. I mean, they were in some cases Josh Jobe or Devin Witherspoon were closer to each other than Corbin and I are standing right here. And that the coverage was tight, but to see the receivers go back and actually snatch the football out of the air, that's one of the things that I have been hypercritical in the past of, say, a DK Metcalf. And what's the point of being a big body pass catcher if you don't actually use that height? To see the body control, the strong hands, and then just the hand-eye coordination to locate it, pluck it quickly. If you have your hands up in the air the entire time, the defensive back is going to know the ball is coming. To be able to get your hands up in the air at the split second, which the ball is right there, and then be able to pull it in effectively, that to me is, all of the reasons why we have big expectations of JSN and big expectations of the rookie Elijah Arroyo, as you mentioned. Let's talk offensive line a little bit more. I know you mentioned Jalen Sundell, and that was one of the big storylines coming out of this practice, getting to see him get a lot of snaps at right guard and mixing in with the first team. He was also doing center snaps, second team. But when he was playing guard and when we had second team offense out there, we got to see Christian Haynes taking some snaps again at the center position. And I will say this today. I thought the first couple team segments that he was struggling with his snaps. He was consistently snapping the ball at the ankles and the feet of the quarterbacks. But I did feel like we saw an improvement as practice unfolded, and he was starting to get the ball up higher. There's good velocity on his snaps. They look clean in that regard. It's all about the up and down location, and he's got to get that down. But this tells me that with Sundell getting those reps at right guard, they are still very much considering the possibility that Christian Haynes, if he isn't going to be your starting right guard, maybe we can try this guy at center, and maybe he can throw his helmet into that ring. They are really showing that they are going to be flexible with where they're going to evaluate these players. And that shouldn't come as a surprise. John Benton has always liked positional versatility when it comes to offensive linemen. Yeah, that was one of the reasons I was so excited when the Seahawks brought in Clint Kubiak and John Benton and Rick Dennis and everybody basically from the New Orleans Saints is I was fortunate enough to be able to go to the New Orleans Saints training camp a year ago, Corbin, and I saw the way that the Saints would just basically mix and match their offensive linemen and ask tackles to play guard or ask guards to play center or whatever the case might be. And so to see that type of versatility actually playing out onto the field with some of Seattle's young offensive linemen really, I think is going to be a benefit for the Seahawks as a team. I think for the individual players as well. So to me, that was one of the exciting things. I wanted to kind of focus in on the tackle spot for a second, because as we talked about with Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas, I mean, they're absolutely critical to the success of this football club. I wanted to see who was going to be the primary backups behind those. It wound up being Josh Jones at the right tackle position, and then is backing up behind Abe Lucas. And then at the left tackle was Mike Jarrell, who Seahawks fans might remember on the late round draft pick a year ago being pushed onto the field at the right tackle position. His athleticism, to me, Corbin, has always screamed going back to that left tackle position. It was good to see him back in that spot. Again, I think that this is going to be better for the individual players. I also think this is going to be better for the team, because this does look like a faster, sleeker, again, crisper offensive line group. These guys were just jumping off of the snap to be able to block downfield. That was a different tempo, a different just a different intent than I saw this early in training camp a year ago. Yeah, I think that's another area the pace is very obvious, and we haven't gotten to see it with pads on yet. We'll get to see that soon. But even in the team drills today, the intent, as you mentioned, just clearly wanting to get out and run. That's what this offense is all about. That's what this scheme is all about, especially in the wide zone runs. You got to have guys that are athletic, that can move, that want to get out in space, and then they want to finish guys off. And that's the thing we haven't gotten to see yet. But I do think Mike Jarrell is more natural at that left tackle position with the athletic traits that he brings to the equation. And I think Josh Jones is a natural fit at that other spot where he's played quite a few snaps dating back to his time at Houston, and he can play some guard as well if you need him to, but it looks like tackle is going to be where he is at. When we come back, we're going to shift over to the defensive side of the football, and I'm really excited to talk about some of the standouts from today, and it isn't even just in team sessions. I just love guys that get into drill work. We are going to be diving into somebody who already is making his presence felt for the entire team. We'll get to that up next here on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Welcome back to Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang, my co-host in crime. In the flesh, we're here at the VMAC, finishing up the first practice here, Seahawks training camp. It was an exciting day to welcome the season, welcome football back. No more OTAs, no more mini camps. We are to the real deal. And Rob, the expectations on offense, it's a little bit more cloudy right now, I would say, because of all the new players, the new coaches. Defense the other way around, like there is incredibly high expectations for this defense that finished in the top 5 in scoring defense over the last 9 games last year. Ernest Jones, a huge part of that. The development of players like Devin Witherspoon and Kobe Bryant was a huge part of that. Looking at this defense, they had 13 of their 14 guys with the most snaps last year come back. But they did add one big name to this group, and we've talked quite a bit about what Demarcus Lawrence brings on the field on game day. But I think what's most impressive about this guy as a seasoned veteran, a lot of times these guys are kind of stuck in their ways and he's coming to a new team. It would be easy for Demarcus Lawrence to look at his new coaching staff. And let's face it, he does know Adam Durante from his time in Dallas, but he could look at Mike McDonald and say, look, I've always done it this way. I don't want to change how I'm doing stuff. But that's not at all how Demarcus Lawrence is doing that. And Mike McDonald said that he is the best drill player that he's ever seen. And I think that is an incredibly high compliment coming from somebody like Mike McDonald, who takes great stock in that. You can tell that there is a purpose behind every rep that he takes. And look, when you got a guy like that on the practice field, if you're a young guy, the last thing you're going to want to do is disappoint Demarcus Lawrence. And those guys are going to be taking every rep that they have with a sense of purpose. And so I just think you're already seeing number 0, just what he brings to this defense.
Yeah, no question about it. Again, we started off the show talking about some of the differences from a year ago. To me, this is a difference from 2 years ago. Longtime Seahawks fans know that Pete Carroll used to just kind of be effusive in his praise of lots of different players. Mike McDonald is not the same kind of a guy. He is usually very cautious with his praise. I mean, this is day 1 of training camp, and for him to be as excited about Demarcus Lawrence as he was, as you said, I mean, pretty much word for word, he thought that Demarcus Lawrence is the best drill guy, technique guy that he's ever seen. I mean, ever. So again, those are bold words. And again, as I mentioned before with the New Orleans Saints, I had an opportunity to go to the Dallas Cowboys training camp. I've watched Demarcus Lawrence. This is not a, hey, this is my first day in Seattle and I want to make a good impression. This is just the way Demarcus Lawrence is wired. This is a good physical football player. Unfortunately, there's some, kind of disheartening news out there with Uchenna Nwosu. So it feels like that the Seahawks need Demarcus Lawrence to come in and play all the way up to his ability when he looked like he was going to be a Pro Bowler yet again a year ago with 4 sacks in his first couple of games.
Yeah, he played at a Pro Bowl level before the injury. And as you mentioned, the Uchenna Nwosu update. And I will still say this. I mean, I was told after he was placed in the PUP list that there was plenty of optimism that he would be ready for week 1. Mike McDonald today made it sound like this is going to go right up to the start of the season and kind of hinted at the idea that they were not completely ruling out the idea that he could miss the start of the season. That would mean he would miss the first 4 games minimum with NFL rules. But here's the thing that really jumped out to me. He made it seem like, well, this is still possible that he could be back. And then he said he's really not close. And that right immediately, as you said, he doesn't sugarcoat things. This is not a coach that tries to wax poetic when it comes to talking about injuries and stuff. And that kind of jumped out to me, like you could get the sense he didn't want to give up anything on their timelines. He's very good about that. But then saying he's really not close, maybe he's ready for week 1 still. Maybe what he means by not close means he's not close to practicing right now. We don't know. But I did think that was kind of a difficult update to hear in terms of him being ready for week one, as many of us anticipated, and maybe he still will be, but that puts more of the onus on Demarcus Lawrence to pick up the slack as a newcomer for the Seahawks. And also it puts some pressure on a couple of these hybrid edge guys that the Seahawks have in their roster, most specifically Mike Morris and incoming rookie Jared Ivey. Mike Morris, you and I have both, I don't want to say even been critical. We've just said, look, it's year 3. And big number 94, formerly playing at Michigan for Mike Macdonald, he's got to start proving that he's capable of playing more than a handful of snaps and that he's not somebody that you're just going to have standing on the sideline. He played 3 snaps the last 8 games last year. Today, though, you and I were standing together on the sideline when this happened, and Mike Morris had a couple of plays where he just quickly got into the backfield, and if they could tackle, their tackles for loss. I mean, he was very disruptive. The one-handed catch by Elijah Arroyo, that was knocked up into the air by, you guessed it, Mike Morris. I thought 94 had a really good day, and Mike Macdonald said, look, they're still really excited about this guy. They still think that he can be a guy that can impact this defensive line rotation, but they haven't gotten the consistency and they haven't gotten the on-field production when he's had his opportunities. He has to cash in this year, and if not, they're looking at Jared Ivey as well, who I didn't see any splash plays from 51 today, but we saw it in OTAs and minicamp. He is very much that same kind of style hybrid player that could have an opportunity to play a lot if Nwosu's banged up.
Yeah, and both of these are players that are kind of physically built a little bit like Leonard Williams, who, of course, we talked about. He was our highest ranked player and when we did our top 90 countdown of the Seahawks. I mean, unbelievable player. If, Mike Morris is not the same caliber of athlete, of course, that Leonard Williams is. But if you didn't know any better, you would have thought that number 99, Leonard Williams, and number 94, Mike Morris, had switched jerseys for today's practice. And, of course, again, here we are live at the Virginia Mason Athletic Center for the 50th training camp in Seattle Seahawks history. Again, if you were a Seahawks fan that was just watching these practices, you would have thought that Mike Morris was the reigning defensive player of the year candidate that Leonard Williams was. As you articulated, I mean, batting passes in the air, just showing his burst upfield. There were some plays that he made himself where he basically put out a big paw and kind of turned around Kenny McIntosh, who was going for a run. I mean, there were several plays at which it was obvious that number 94 was dominating that particular snap. There were several other plays where it wasn't quite as obvious, but he was the one that kind of created the disturbance to allow some of the other defenders to make a play. So again, a terrific opening day for Mike Morris.
Yeah, I thought 94 looked good. And again, Jared Ivey getting some positive reviews from Mike Macdonald after practice. And like you said, he is not one that sugarcoats things typically. So the fact that he's excited about both these guys, they're going to have to step up with depth concerns that we have talked about on the defensive line. As for the cornerback room, let's talk a little bit about injuries because Shaquille Griffin was out there wearing number 24 today, his first practice back in the Seahawks uniform, but he didn't actually practice. He was wearing tennis shoes. Mike Macdonald said he was ill when he got to town last night, so it was precautionary. They're hoping he's going to be back. You mentioned this, Shamar Jean-Charles. You saw him walk it into the trainer's room, came off the practice field. I don't remember seeing him back out there at any point. We don't have any updates on that front, but this would mean Josh Jobs getting all the first-team reps right now. It doesn't sound like anything to be concerned about with Shaquille Griffin, but every rep that he loses right now, this is Josh Jobs' job to lose after the way he played last year. And so I think that this bears watching, especially if Shamar Jean-Charles does have an injury that he suffered. Again, we don't have any updates on that. Did see him go inside. So there could already be some questions at that cornerback group literally one day in a training camp.
Yeah, and so that's obviously a storyline that bears watching. Shamar Jean-Charles is a good football player. I know that the Seahawks have high expectations of him, but I also think that the high expectations also extend to Josh Jobe, as you talked about. I mean, the fact that he played as well as he did a year ago, he was beaten for a couple of plays today. But again, he was in very close position, and I think that, in the very first couple of days of training camp, the defensive backs are basically being asked not to attack the football. That's going to give the wide receivers and tight ends opportunities to make plays on the ball. I think that you see the lights turn on, the preseason games actually start. That's where you're going to see Josh Jobe play his best football. He is a highly physical player, instinctive player. And so again, I think that the Seahawks and Seahawks fans can take some solace in the fact that they do have quality depth at the cornerback spot should Shaquille Griffin or Shamar Jean-Charles have any type of injury issues.
And this would be a prime opportunity for Nehemiah Pritchett as well. Yes. This is a great opportunity for the second-year player out of Auburn if he's going to get more snaps. And again, it sounds like Shaquille Griffin has a chance to be back tomorrow. because it's just a sickness. That's the good news. But if he does miss another practice or two, we'll have to see what happens. It does give more opportunities for somebody like a Nehemiah Pritchett, especially if Shamar Jean-Charles is not out there, that he can get reps, maybe even get some snaps with the first team defense, something he did a little bit during the year last year before Josh Jobe took over that starting job. So cornerback, a position we're watching very closely. Safeties as well. Didn't get a lot of looks today as far as how Mike McDonald's going to be using the defense, but that's going to bear watching as we go deeper into training camp. And we are just getting started. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Come up tomorrow, we will have another post-training camp episode coming your way. Takeaways from day 2 at the VMAC, plus our first interviews, one-on-one for the season coming your way as well. Make sure that you listen in and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Go Hawks.